The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The second round is off to a bang as the New York Knicks take the upset win in Game 1.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
108-105. Knicks beat the Celtics. So many places to go with this. It ends up going to overtime. There's a would-be Jalen Brunson game winner at the end of regulation that just barely doesn't go in at one of his signature shots. Honestly, one of the best after timeout plays I think I've ever seen drawn up from Tibbs. So clearly he saved some of his best work for this game. This phenomenal defense from Mikal Bridges, phenomenal defense and shot making from OG Anunoby, who just had his impact felt all over this game. I mean, where do you want to start this one on this crazy first game in the second round?
First, I'm in a hotel room, so I didn't want to scream too loud. But I'll just let it out now. Let's go! This is the first time in months this team has made me feel something. I know some of you have commented on that, but I've been in kind of a place of acceptance that like this was just maybe not the worst case scenario for the Knicks in the sense that, like, there wasn't some kind of traumatic injury this year, but it did feel like, given the talent that they assembled and the fact that talent was relatively healthy, like that this was going the wrong way, at least to me. And not that tonight like necessarily changes that. Like, the Knicks obviously benefit from the fact that the Celtics miss 45 3-pointers in this game, which is the most, I think, by a decent margin that any team has ever missed in a single playoff game. And yet, Alex, if I told you coming in that the Knicks would give up 19 offensive rebounds in this one and would shoot 17 to 31 from the foul line, I would have said they probably would lose by 25 plus. But given the way the Celtics shot, given all the misses, like, this became a game that the Knicks absolutely had to win. And it's why it was so incredibly gut-wrenching when that shot that Jalen Brunson, I mean, we've seen him hit game winners just in this playoffs that have a degree of difficulty of 1,000-fold compared to that. Not that it's an easy shot, right? Al Horford's right there. He got a great contest on it, but that is a shot that Jalen Brunson makes in his sleep. It goes in and out, and you just had this sinking feeling like the basketball gods gifted one to the Knicks. And as has happened so often this year, like, they couldn't accept the gift. And then they put together an incredibly gutty overtime. And despite the fact that Brunson, I think maybe, I should have double checked this, maybe has 2 points in OT, but is pretty much a non-factor because Drew Holiday plays great defense on him. The Knicks are still able to somehow, some way, but he does not score in overtime. The Knicks are able to somehow, some way hold on, pull it off. Mikal Bridges, who was like just incredible defensively in this one down the stretch, 51 minutes, makes a game-winning play, anticipating the lob to Jaylen Brown, getting there at the exact same time. And I think my favorite part about that, we've associated Bridges all year with like frailty and lack of physicality, and he just rips the ball out of Jaylen Brown, who's freaking jacked, just rips the ball out of his hands, throws it in the air. Knicks take game one. Gutty game from the wings. 51 minutes for Bridges, 46 for Anunoby, 45 for Hart. I think what those three guys did in the third quarter, particularly Anunoby and Hart, kind of flipped this game on its head.
Yeah, I was going to say, a game full of guys ripping the ball out of people's hands. Josh Hart did the exact same thing late in this game, forced a turnover where I forget who it was.
He had one on Peyton Pritchard. I don't know. You might be talking about a different one.
I think it was the one on Pritchard where Pritchard ends up on the ground.
As in the third quarter. Yeah.
Right. And Hart just reaches down, grabs the ball out of his hands. Almost looked like it was going to be a jump ball, but he got such a good tug on it that he managed to just pull the ball completely free, start a fast break that way. And that one led to a Brunson 3, if I recall correctly. I mean, just a crazy good game from him and from OG and from Mikal. Like, I think the big thing from the Knicks here is, like you mentioned, the huge 3-point shooting miss number. But I mean, the fact that the Celtics wound up shooting 63s as a team in this game is crazy because I don't think they wanted to shoot that many threes. I think that early on it looked like they wanted to try to exploit getting inside, try to get to the line. But this is not a team that spent a lot of time at the free throw line this year, and the Knicks might have sort of figured out their Achilles heel a little bit here, where they're not exactly adept at getting inside despite having this 5-out spacing. They were playing a little scared on the inside, honestly. Like whenever they would get there, the Knicks were sending aggressive help defense under the hoop, which was then forcing guys into panic situations where they're trapped on the baseline, having to kick it out to someone. And then to the credit of OG and Mikhail and Josh, they were like fully ready to close out on any given guy, even if it was like sort of a like I don't want to call it a half-hearted contest, but like a contest that you looked at on TV and said like, oh man, I don't know if he got all of that one. Like as far as a contest, it's clear that like at a certain point Boston started hearing footsteps and it was affecting their shots. Like their threes just looked really off down the stretch of this game. Like they seemed shook. They seemed like they were afraid of, the Knicks defenders getting a hand in their face, because more than one time, and particularly Bridges had a phenomenal block three point in this game. But like, these guys were getting those long arms in people's faces and really making themselves be felt, to the point where then it had guys second guessing later on if a guy was close enough to potentially, block their shot or whatever, and you could see it affecting their release and everything. I don't know if look, the Celtics, to their credit, also have a ton of really great tough shot makers that just didn't make tough shots in this game. Obviously, we've seen it from Jason Tatum throughout this regular season. Jaylen Brown has done it to the Knicks at different times. Porzingis didn't play the whole second half, which I don't think should go unrecognized. Like that was definitely a big portion of the Knicks being able to get things together in the second half. I think was just he didn't play well in the first half, but his presence was felt. Yeah. And, not even having that presence in the second half, Luke Kornet gets in foul trouble, which meant they had to rely heavily on Al Horford. And like that SOB is an ageless wonder and it annoys the crap out of me. But like him playing 34 minutes, probably not ideal at this stage in his career to be playing that many minutes when he's typically more of a spot minutes, like make the most out of 15 or so minutes kind of guy. So, I think this is a huge strategic win for the Knicks that I didn't really see coming, in the sense that they sort of let Boston do what they wanted to do, in the sense that Boston loves to shoot threes, and yet they made it difficult enough for them while also being imposing enough on the inside to prevent them from doing that. That like the Celtics just didn't really have an answer for what the Knicks game plan was down the stretch. And that's why the Knicks were able to go on that huge run, erase that 20-point deficit that they accrued in the first half, and then come away with the win in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the key adjustment from Tom Thibodeau, who in games 3 and 4 against the Celtics switched in spurts. The Knicks were mostly switching from the get-go in this one. There were large with Brunson. They tried a lot of hedge and recover, and that was like, I need to go back and watch to confirm, but from what I saw, that was pretty disastrous for the most part. Like I would guess like about half of the Celtics 15 made threes came on possessions where Brunson hedged, tried to get back, and just left someone wide open like in that gap before the original defender could get back to his guy. But then down the stretch of this game, they were just switching him. And like, I'll give Jalen Brunson, this isn't really what I expected to leave this starting off with. Like, he did a really good job multiple times on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, switching onto them. I mean, the one in overtime where he switched on to Tatum tried to shake him. Brunson didn't get shook, and then he bumped him and hit this and tried to go to the step back, and he ends up airballing it. Alex, you're a big Marvel guy. I'll compare it to like Thanos, like punching Captain Marvel in the face, and she doesn't flinch. That was the moment for me. That was really satisfying. I had another one with Jaylen Brown where he switched, forced the shot clock to dwindle, and then he sprayed it to Tatum. Tatum ends up missing a layup. That's at the tail end of the fourth quarter. But I thought it was a key adjustment from Tom Thibodeau, because to your point, like it got Boston mismatch hunting. And in particular, maybe some of it was that Kristaps Porzingis obviously was sick, but like Kristaps Porzingis was scoreless. I think he finished with 0 points in 13 minutes. And the Knicks early in this game did a great job switching onto him. But that third quarter run, it was 31-13 in total. There was a mini 17-4 stretch in there. To me, it was three guys, right? It was Josh Hart, it was OG Anunoby, it was Jalen Brunson. I thought Hart just like game-changing energy, because the Knicks, like, I don't want to say there was no effort there, because there were effort, but it was lifeless. And it was kind of like, I think a lot of the tone was set with Josh just refusing to shoot early in this game, to the point that he threw a pass out of bounds rather than take an early 20-foot jumper. Like they did not have a lot of energy. They did not have a lot of juice. They did not have a lot of confidence. And I thought Josh Hart just kind of completely flipped that like about halfway through the third quarter.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking up the excitement of an NBA matchup. But finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until Gametime. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
How did the Denver Nuggets beat the Thunder in Game 1?
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast.
Somehow? Against all odds?
Just an insane. Like I said this right before. This was the definition of a stolen win. Like the Thunder were up the entire game. Denver just kept hanging around. They made every big shot to just stay within striking distance. Jokic made that 3 to cut it to 1, and then Denver played the foul game, and holy cow, man, Aaron Gordon, once again, the hero of the moments. Like, dude's on another level in these playoffs. It has been awesome, a privilege to watch Aaron Gordon play basketball this year.
God, he's insane. Like, he's just insane. He's just the Russ making the pass, AG spotting up for that shot, knocking it down. What an incredible story. By the way, with Aaron Gordon on the floor tonight, the Denver Nuggets had a 17.5% offensive rebound rate. That's high. If you're
offensive rebounds for him alone, I believe. Like, he was fighting the entire time. There were several possessions where it was him going up against the smaller wings on the Thunder, or just big boying Chet Holmgren, big boying Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, it's incredible to watch him. And look, I don't care if anybody kills us for the takes that we had. Everything that we had was built in logic, and there was no logic that went into that win. Zero.
None. Zero. Like, that game, like, Nikola Jokic had 7 turnovers and 6 assists in this game.
Yeah.
Now, Nikola Jokic also had 42 points and 22 rebounds.
Monster.
And was a monster.
Yeah.
Look, man, I got a history of the game that says that coming off of Game 7s, you lose this game and you lose them badly. Teams that lost in this spot when they're not rested off 2 days rest and the opponent is rested, you know what the average margin of victory since 2003 is? 19 points per game. That's how often the other team wins.
And wins big.
And wins massive.
Yeah.
And the Nuggets just hung. And there were all these times when I was like, all right, well, the Thunder are going to hit him with a haymaker and then they'll go down.
Yeah.
And every time that OKC would push it to 14, Russ would make a play.
Yep.
AG would make a play.
Yep.
Christian would make a play. And it's back inside single digits. And they just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. And when you do that and you hang on, you can clown me all you want. I don't regret the analysis, because it was reasonable to expect humans to be tired, to be exhausted after that series and that game and travel and in this spot for them to go down. It is not, in my opinion, a failure of my analysis. It is a credit to the heart, hustle, grit, and absolute stubbornness of the Denver Nuggets that they will not go away. This remains the most mentally tough team in basketball. And when they are faced with challenges like this, and when all odds are up against them, they respond. They responded. And it's absolutely incredible. Credit to David Adelman and the staff. Credit to all the players. But also, they were down by 14 for the majority of this game. And then in the last 5 minutes, the Thunder just absolutely imploded. All the experience stuff that I was hesitant, because I was like, well, they're just so well executed and they're so well coached and they're so disciplined. They rush shots. They force
on it.
Like, they miss all of these types of like key clutch things versus the Nuggets, who were like, we need this play, make it happen. We need this play. Jokic, like, jab steps Chet into oblivion and nails that 3 to make it a 1-point game.
Like, sometimes you just know what it takes, And I think, and I have certainly underrated the Nuggets throughout this entire process, and them understanding what it takes to win in some of these moments, especially these close games. Like they've lost a couple of close games, but in some of them they just didn't have it. This one, it felt like they for the entire time just never gave an inch. There were a couple of times that they missed. Like Russell Westbrook missed the 3-pointer in the left corner. And I thought, okay, Aaron Gordon gets the rebound, goes up strong, doesn't finish because there's two guys around him. I thought, okay, that's it. That's the one. But then OKC just kept playing the foul game, and Mark Daigneault, fouling very aggressively, very early in the shot, in the game clock.
Again, that's so I'll just say this. That's everyone misunderstands Daigneault, I feel like, because I'm just like, guys, do you understand the reason he does all this stuff is because of how much he respects the Nuggets?
Sure.
That's why he's trying to get Jokic away from all the quick action, because he knows how much it kills teams.
Yeah.
That's why he's fouling up 3, because he's like, I'm not giving Nikola Jokic a chance to win this game.
And I get it. Totally understand. But for OKC not to execute in that moment, also, by the way, very funny that the ball just dropped on that final missed free throw. And the ball hits the floor in the middle of all the Nuggets. And I threw up my hands what are you doing? So it's the fact that this game went Denver's way is just incredible. I said this on social. This is probably the most incredible win of the Nikola Jokic era. Last 10 years. I cannot remember another one. People brought up the 7. This was like the 7 in a game 1 on the road against the best team in the NBA. The Utah game is a regular season game after the trade deadline. Nobody cares. This one, holy cow, man. The fact that they have the resilience to even find a way to get that done is just unbelievable.
I hated the way this game was officiated. I hated it. I hated it on all sides. I hated it. Also, a conversation you and I often have about certain people and their behavior in terms of drawing fouls. We're going to revisit the next time.
No, we are not doing that tonight. That is not acceptable tonight.
Why?
Because this is a time for celebration. This is a time for a win.
Oh, not tonight. I'm just saying on Friday we're going to revisit it.
Okay, well, yeah, when I'm complaining about SGA foul calls, yes, we can revisit it.
But also, I will just say, that was a huge part of this game, though. The Nuggets shot 33 free throws. They shot 33. Now, they were fouling up 3, right? So,
yeah.
3 sets of those are in that kind of a set. But Jokic gets to the line for 13 in this game.
Yeah.
And it was the aggression. And I wondered going in, as much as here's the thing. This is what annoys me so much is I said the game 1. I said last night on the show when I was breaking this down, I was like, yeah, they're going to lose game 1. You do data work for game 2. And I was going to like them in game 2.
Yeah.
Because I was like, when I start looking at the matchups, I'm just like, well, no, Chet and Hartenstein are not Zoo. They're just not the same guy.
Yes.
It's not about better, worse. It's about what type of player are you? How big are you? How strong are you? What are your arms? What's your length? How do you play? They're not the same guy. And that's evident by the fact that Joker just had the best game of the playoffs and absolutely dominated them and got a number of really questionable calls. He was absolutely a monster in this game. And this is what's going to happen is in this series, he's going to get those guys in foul trouble and they're going to have to play small. And that's when AG is going to bust them because AG just continues to be an absolute tank. An absolute tank. Aaron Gordon night, 22 points, 7 of 15 shooting, 3 of 6. If I told you last year Aaron Gordon was going to be 3 of 6 in a playoff game, you would have been like, that is the 99% outcome. And this year, it's
what I would have been like is okay, so they got the Aaron Gordon game in that moment. This is just what Aaron Gordon's game is now at this stage of his career, that is the real credit to him and all the work that he put in. It was a weakness for him last year. Frankly, it has been a weakness for him for his entire career. And for him to go around last offseason and just lock himself in the gym and turn himself into a shooter that's more comfortable with his shot and more comfortable in situations like these. He's always been a player that is capable of making clutch plays, but the fact that he's able to do it over and over again, the competence and the confidence that he has in himself in this moment, it's at another level. He has leveled up as a player.
Jalen Williams was 5 of 20. Chet Holmgren, 5 of 11. Like, Shea wound up with 33 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. I did not feel him in this game at all.
I thought Shea was great. First and fourth quarter, he was very great. But in the middle of this game where Denver was just kind of hanging around, not a lot of Shea. Not a lot of Shea in that moment.
They got 20 points from Alex Caruso on 7 of 12 shooting and 5 of 9 from 3.
He was an absolute absolute sociopath on the defensive end. Just unbelievable. What I would give to have a guy like that, frankly, Russ did that in game 7, so I'm not going to complain that much, but holy cow, just being able to go to your bench and be able to go get that guy is insane. That's going to make a difference throughout the series.
It's really, Caruso was so good that all Nuggets fans are just like, God, that guy's good. Everybody's like, God, that guy's awesome.
He's so annoyingly good.
I can't believe Aaron Gordon just had that game. He's had these playoffs. He's just been a monster.
Yeah.
He's been so physical with these guys and he is just bullying them. Let's talk about Russ, man. Let's talk about Russ. 18 points on 7 of 13 shooting, 1 of 5. He had the wide open 3, which would have been for I think the tie, and missed it. And everybody's like, how are you giving that to Russell Westbrook? And I was like, he's made those. He's made those.
No, I honestly, they gave it to him in those places consistently. He made them in the last series, didn't make it so far in this game. I'm willing to keep going to that. And frankly, they need him out there because Mike was just he was horrible in this game. We don't have to talk about that much, but he was not really present. But Russ's third quarter was such a big deal in terms of changing the tide, changing the energy. Denver was it was that moment to me that I was like, okay, this is one where you feel like it could slip. This is the time where you feel like it could go from 10 to 20 very quickly. And the fact that Russ over and over again in that third quarter not only helped them keep it keep it close, but they actually cut into the lead, and it was a 5-point deficit by the time they're going into the fourth quarter. Russ deserves a ton of credit. He has been so consistent in this entire playoff run. Just incredible. Not a perfect first half for him in this one, but who cares? He was great in the third.
Well, game 1 between the Leafs and the Panthers is in the books, and it sure was an exciting one.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
It was a game that it was a tale of two Maple Leaf teams, in my opinion. There was the pre-Stolarz injury team, and then there was the post-Stolarz injury team.
Yeah, and for me, it was basically just pretty much a tale of 40 and 60, where it's just 2/3 of the game, hey, the boys were clicking, they were looking really good, and then Wool let in a couple goals that you shouldn't allow, but then right as you're getting there, as Nyes just brings the team to life, but then unfortunately, he who shall not be named brought it within 1. But I have to say that last minute 50 of the third period, they really, it goes back to game 6 too. They really knew how to lock in and just secure a win.
Didn't it remind you a little bit, if you're a Leaf fan and if you watched the Winnipeg game, were you a little more concerned than you would have been 2 days earlier?
You know what? I don't like throwing people under the bus too often, but Chris Cuthbert brought that up. He's like, even though we did see something happen in Winnipeg, St. Louis looks pretty similar. I'm like, CC, what are you doing here, man? This is not. You don't throw that in there in a game 1 situation. It's only game 1. I get it. You ain't throwing that in there. But yeah, what a turn of events. Yeah, really is. I do think that this was a situation where you look at this game, the Leafs first 40 minutes, clearly the better team. Yep. No way, shape, or form would I say Florida was the better team in those 40 minutes, even though and then you look at the third period and they score those 3 goals and you wonder, okay, did Florida just finally find things at the right time, or did the Leafs sit back a little bit too much with a 4-1 lead, thinking, hey, we got this, we're playing our game very well. 4-2 lead. Sorry. It was 1-1. Sorry, 4-1. Yeah, 4-1. Then they score the 2 goals early. One thing I will say about that, though, is you take a 4-1 lead. Yes, they get 2 quick goals. And what does Craig Berube do? he gets that time. He calls a timeout, and it's a gutsy timeout to call because they're pulling it close, right? And you don't know how situation is going to change later in the game. But I do think that with that situation, that's where a coach like Craig Berube comes in, and he tells the group basically, refocus, guys, refresh, get yourselves back into it. And look, Florida kicked it to another gear in the third. But if that's what if Florida's gonna, and I think this is something that needs to be said because I know a lot of people are feeling anxious about what the Leafs have done. But if they think that Florida turning it on for one period should make it all concerning, you can't also look past how they played in the first 40 minutes because they looked out of sorts too. So you got to kind of balance, I think, the reaction. I think because everything was fresh with that third period, with Anthony Stolarz leaving the game, there's a lot of that was fresh. But I don't think we can totally move past what the Leafs had done in those 40 minutes. They showed their form. It's just, it wasn't there in the third period. But that's what happens when a team is trailing and push, and they get a little bit of life early on.
I'm gonna punch that balloon a little. I'm gonna put a pin in that balloon a little bit. I think that game was close because Matthews can't hit a net from the blue line that's empty, and he had a couple of other shots like that he couldn't. And I'm going to say, rather than be negative about Matthews and Marner and the core five thing that everybody talks about, I'm going to talk about the new guy. And the new guy is Matthew Nyes. He is the best Maple Leaf in the playoffs outside of the goal. And they got to be thankful that kid has really proven to be a playoff performer. Again, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be negative with the core four, but that kid literally helped them win the series against Ottawa, and he ensured that this game was going to be a tough one for Florida to win.
Absolutely. That's the big thing. Like, he's in a contract year, but also to the fact that I know we got the dog a lot of Kyle Dubas's moves, bringing a lot of former Sioux Greyhounds, but that's the one true gem of a great parting gift that Kyle left behind in his Leafs tenure. I also look at Florida as a team that, they haven't played in 5 days. The Leafs played, I know it was a day earlier, but still, if you look at it, Florida had a surprisingly cakewalk series against Tampa Bay. And I think a big component for the rest of the series going forward for the Leafs, I know everyone's saying, you got to match, they can't match Florida's physicality. I think mentally they have to stay calm. I think that's why Berube called that timeout after the third goal to basically say, guys, bring it in. We're going to be okay. That's all they have to say. Instead of panic, it's just, hey, weather the storm. We're going to be okay. Get one more, which thankfully they did get one more, because if they didn't, I think we'd still be watching hockey right now. But, it's just one of those things where, one of two things. One, we don't need any more 8 o'clock hockey. But the other one is just, I think it was a tale of two teams, but at the same time, too, it's a team that, hey, pay attention to what happened in the first 40 minutes, and this team can go far. Because even though he let in a couple weird ones, Joseph Woll looked really solid for his first little bit in the second period. Give him a full game, give him a full practice at warm-up, because we'll get into the injury stuff, but if I had to bet money on it, I think he's going to be the starter for game 2. And one other key point for tonight's game 2 is Florida's top guys were completely quiet tonight. I know, obviously, look, Bennett had the one
third
goal,
period they brought it, but first 2 periods it was crickets. It was crickets from not until they were down, and they were like, okay, let's see what we can get away with. And we'll get into obviously that. It's kind of combined with the Stolarz part. But
Barkov didn't look healthy. He took that one hit, and he looks like he might be still feeling a bit of the injury bug that he had previously. And I'd like to add one little quick thing.
From the Hagel hit, you're right.
Yes. I think the Leafs also, scouting is a very important part of what happens. Now, in this kind of situation, playoffs and stuff, you can watch the television and watch what's going on. I think it was very important that the Leafs, I think the organization, the management team said, hey, guys, don't get dragged into the crap after the whistle. Don't get dragged into the crap after the whistle. Because, gentlemen, I think Tampa Bay lost because they tried to match Florida with the stupid stuff.
They also got their power play completely. Just their power play was cooked against Florida as well. Tampa could not get a single thing going until that Gensel goal, I think, in game 5.
Yeah, that was the thing too. Yeah, the Leafs had opportunities on the power play, and it just wasn't happening for them. They went 0 for 5 on the night, which
I'm not
That's
a
not a
play.
recipe for not a recipe for success long term.
It's one of those things.
I'm not a power play expert, guys, but you could tell. Like, if we watch the playoffs and replay all the power plays the Leafs had at the beginning, they were making the play right away. What is it? They had 4 goals in 28 seconds at the beginning against, in the first series, and in this series, they're taking 2 minutes before they take their first shot. Just shoot the puck at the net. What have we learned in these playoffs? Just shoot the puck at the net.
Yeah, there was a picture of me going around our Discord chat with me beside the television. My goal of that was when they had a puck on their stick, I was going to yell shoot as if I was right behind the players saying shoot. But we'll get into kind of the 3 stars of the game. We'll highlight some of the good things that happened. But yeah, the special teams, that's something the Leafs are going to have to figure out going forward, because you cannot let that be an 0 for 5 all series long. That there's opportunities, you got to take advantage of them.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, and you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
It is officially over. The Baltimore Ravens announced they released kicker Justin Tucker.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
It is official. The Baltimore Ravens have moved on from Justin Tucker. He has been released in a statement from Eric DeCosta. We'll get into what DeCosta had to say, why the Ravens made the move now, and obviously what comes next for Baltimore, because we are entering a new era, and we'll get into that a little more on tomorrow's episode, so be sure you stay tuned for that. We'll have former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail help break this down a little bit more, but there's a lot to unpack here. This ends a saga that has been going on for the past couple of months. Obviously, the reasoning in Eric DeCosta, let's just start off by reading the statement so that we understand what Baltimore said about it. Eric DeCosta released the statement about, the time of this recording, about 45 minutes ago, saying, quote, "Sometimes football decisions are incredibly difficult, and this is one of those instances. Considering our current roster, we have made the tough decision to release Justin Tucker. Justin created many significant and unforgettable moments in Ravens history. His reliability, focus, drive, resilience, and extraordinary talent made him one of the league's best kickers for over a decade. We are grateful for Justin's many contributions while playing for the Ravens. We sincerely wish him and his family the very best in this next chapter of their lives." So again, that was Eric DeCosta's official statement on the matter. Tucker out after 13 years as the Ravens kicker. Now, obviously on the field, Tucker has been one of the best, in my opinion, on the field, the greatest kicker of all time. And, that's something that needs to be talked about in this situation. But his Ravens tenure, and I said this on social media, it ends shrouded in mystery and uncertainty and kind of with a thud instead of a celebratory, hey, Justin Tucker. I mean, it's quite the opposite. Obviously, with the year that he had in 2024, he was pretty terrible for most of it, career worst across the board outside of the last quarter of that year. And then obviously the allegations coming out against him just a couple days after the season ends. And a lot of what kind of I imagined a couple years ago of, man, whenever Justin Tucker retires, there's going to be this big celebration and it's going to be such a big day. And all this, that was my mindset a couple of years ago. But here we are today. And it just kind of feels like, I don't want to call it the inevitable, because there were still situations where the Ravens could have kept him on the roster. But obviously, the Ravens are making it clear that this was a football decision. Second, third words of the statement. Football decisions are incredibly difficult. So the investigation from the NFL, at least from my knowledge, is still going on. But the Ravens decided to, I don't want to say they got out in front of anything, because I truly don't know what the NFL is going to find or not find. I truly could not tell you. But the Ravens drafted Tyler Loop in the 6th round, and that was a pretty big indicator of what was to come for Baltimore. Now, there were instances where they kept Tucker and cut Tyler Loop. They're not afraid to cut picks. Eric DeCosta in his era as Ravens general manager, he's made that very clear. But the Ravens really like what they have in Tyler Loop, which again, we'll get into more a little bit later in the show today, and a lot more on tomorrow's episode, kind of breaking down this new era of Ravens football. But the Ravens, over their course of franchise history, when you talk about guys like Matt Stover, who came in and set a standard, and then, Billy Cundiff gets a really bad rep, and, for that kick in New England, deservedly so. It was horrendous. It cost the Ravens, in my opinion, another Super Bowl. Before that kick, he was actually good for Baltimore. You can go and look up his stats. Cundiff, despite the kick and how he kind of lives in infamy in Baltimore sports history, he was good for them before that kick against New England in the AFC Championship. And now you have Justin Tucker, who came in 2012, and he said, all right, Cundiff, get out of here. You're done, because the Ravens were giving Cundiff an opportunity to win that job. If you remember, Tucker, as a rookie, said, all right, this is my job now. For 13 seasons, we've seen him kick for the Baltimore Ravens. So it's going to be a new era. It's going to be different. But the writing, I think, was on the wall with the way that he performed last season. And even you can go back, and I see people commenting it in the live chat right now, his 50-plus stats were not good over the last 2 years. I mean, let's just look over some of the things that Tucker did over the course of his career and why last year was such an anomaly, it felt like. But in reality, it kind of felt like that was where we were headed with Justin Tucker. Last season, from 50-plus, Tucker went 1 for 5. It was by far his worst year from 50-plus of his career. He follows that up last year by going 6 for 11. He had a 73.3% field goal percentage last year. He cost the Ravens multiple games with big missed kicks. And you can go back to the Pittsburgh game or the Philadelphia game where his points added up. I think the stat, and I think ESPN was the one that showed this, but it was the Ravens lost their games by, I think it might have been 21 or 24 points, and Justin Tucker missed 21 or 24 points worth of field goals. So obviously you then loop in, or you add on top of that, the off-field allegations, and it just makes a situation where, you have a lot that you have to unpack. You have a lot that you have to investigate. And again, what the Ravens did is they deferred to the NFL. That was clearly the stance. That Baltimore took. So I don't know the timing here, and the Ravens, I think Jets Rebeck of The Athletic did report that this is going to be a post-June 1st cut. So for Baltimore, that means that they couldn't release Tucker and save money unless they did the post-June 1 cut. So Brian McFarland, Ravens salary cap. At the time, he didn't know if it was post-June 1 or not, but here's how this will work. If they didn't do this and release him as post-June 1, he would have counted 7.5 dead money on the 25 cap, which was 445,000 more than he was counting while he was on the roster. But the post-June 1 designation means that they will save $4.2 million on the 2025 cap. Now, that savings, that comes after June 1st. Obviously, that's what post-June 1st means. So they'll save $4.2 million on 25 cap after June 1st, but they will carry a $4.645 million dead cap hit on the 2026 cap. So Brian McFarland, Ravens salary cap, outlining how that whole situation is going to work. The writing here for Tucker, and this was before, I mean, look, Tucker was going through this stretch and we were all wondering, let's just, for the time being, set the off-field allegations aside, which are a big part of the story, but I just want to talk about it on the field. Then we'll move a little bit more into the off-field stuff for a little. It's a matter of, is he the best guy? Does he give you the best chance to win football games? If Tucker hadn't cost them those couple of games, we'd be talking about them as at least the 2 seed, maybe making a run at the 1 seed, depending on what happened there. But it didn't work that way. It just felt like for the first time in a long time, really for the first time, in my opinion, ever. And I don't know if other people felt this way, but I'll kind of detail my experience here, is whenever Tucker came on the field prior to this season, and, I guess for points last year from 50 plus, there were times where like I felt like, oh man, is Tucker going to make this kick? And then time and time again, that feeling just goes away because he walks on the field for those first 11, 12 years. And you're like, okay, Tucker's going to come on, make this kick. The pressure doesn't get to him. And then this past year, my heart sank every time Tucker came on the field after the initial start to the year. Like I had no confidence in Justin Tucker. So I just, it was much different. It was a much different feeling on the field for Justin Tucker. So, I know that the Ravens said this was a football decision. Obviously, post June 1, that is a football part of it. I don't know what they're thinking over there at one winning drive, but I would probably have to say this is more than just a football decision. I mean, I personally don't believe it's only about football here. Obviously, the NFL, they are still doing their investigation, so you don't want to, if you're Baltimore, comment on that too much. But I do think that, this is how they're spinning it. This is what they're going with. But I have to believe that it has a little bit more to do with just the football, the football aspect of it, and we will see if another team picks him up, we'll see. And I don't know if a team will or won't. That's going to be an interesting conversation if it does happen. I was expecting this, my prediction was that he was going to get cut at some point. I don't think I was expecting it this early. I would have. And the reason you can do it is because you can designate someone as a post June 1 cut before June 1. You have 2 of those. So they did it with Michael Pierce, and then that whole not a cut. It was Marcus Williams. Excuse me. Michael Pierce is the retirement. I got my wires crossed. They did it with Marcus Williams. So Marcus Williams was the first designated post June 1 cut, and he helped them out in a couple different ways too. Marcus Williams did. But the second aspect, the second guy you do, it is Justin Tucker. So his year this year does not wash away all of the on-field stuff that he did for Baltimore, but obviously it's just a lot more than that at this point. And, you have to move on if you don't feel like he's the best fit for you. And whether that's on or off the field, how much on-field contributed, how much off-field contributed, I don't know. But if another team does pick him up, they will have to deal with not only, what the NFL finds in their investigation and whether, I don't know what that entails, but also the drop-off that he had. Now, to Tucker's credit on the field, he was able to get it together over the past quarter of the year. But it's just all of the buildup that I had. I took over this show in 2019, right? And I've made that very clear. On Friday was my 1,500th consecutive episode of this show. Doing this show for so long and being a Ravens fan for my entire life, and watching guys like Stover come through and Cundiff, and then, the entirety of Tucker's career. For me, I was kind of building up this moment over the past 10 years of like, man, this guy's so awesome. Like, you never want him to retire, never want him to leave. And then it all just kind of came crashing down, both on and off the field, right? I mean, his on-field performance over the last year plus had kind of dwindled a little bit. And then obviously you add on this other element to it. And it's like, man, it just feels a lot different, I guess, than I thought it would be. This was expected. And I never felt this to be expected. So the Tucker career ends. It's over.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking up the excitement of an NBA matchup. But finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until Gametime. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Michigan preemptively self-imposing a 2-game suspension on head coach Sharon Moore.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Michigan according to ESPN, has self-imposed a 2-game suspension on Sharon Moore for weeks 3 and 4. If you're doing the math there, that's Sharon will miss coaching against the team that Michigan hired him away from. That's Central Michigan at home, and miss being on the road at Nebraska. Of course, he'll get to, if everything stands, coach at his alma mater. According to Pat Forty over at Yahoo, the Committee on Infractions is set to convene for a hearing on June 6th and 7th. And thus, we should be getting closer and closer to an actual resolution as it pertains to the Connor Stalions saga. In case you missed it, don't remember, think it was pertaining to something else, Jesse Minter had agreed to a 1-year show cause and Steve Klingscale to a 2-year show cause. They're suspended so long as that they're in the NFL for some of the added recruiting violations that were discovered through NCAA exposition throughout as they continued to try to find what they could pin on Connor Stalions, Jim Harbaugh, and the rest. Of course, you've got the rival fans, you've got fans of other teams. The Clemson ones, man, I see a few Clemson ones. It's like they're just throwing stones at glass houses in general, which is just nuts to me. But they're out celebrating, and they're tying Santa Ono deciding to take the Florida job reportedly for about double the amount of pay. And as John U. Bacon put out there, no one in Michigan seemed particularly upset that he was departing the program. I want to say program, I should say institution. It's not a program, University of Michigan, because of course all the rival sports fans want to make Santa Ono leaving, the president of the university, right? Like that's like their sole job is sports. Yeah, that's like barely their job. Not leaving due to your proverbial hammer. But Sharon suspended 2 games by Michigan. I have a lot of thoughts on this, and hopefully we can get them all in here within the allotted time frame or what have you. Number one, I want to come back on those who say, well, if you didn't do something guilty, listen, what he's accused of is not having knowledge of the Connor stuff, of not having participation in all of that. It's on the text messages that he deleted. We did a little demonstration of how quickly it takes to delete text messages. This is what Sharon did. He read Connor Stalions, and I have this on good authority. He read Connor Stalions' name in the paper. He went and saw that, I've got text with him. And all he basically did, having an iPhone, is just a little swipe, delete, done. They make it seem like it was something big and whatever. Now, is that well advised? No, it absolutely is not. It's very ill-advised that he did that. But that's not necessarily showing that there's anything that was incriminating. And again, I have on good authority that there was nothing that incriminated him, but that's still considered by the NCAA impeding an investigation, even though he turned them over and all of that. Okay, so that's number one. He was going to get suspended for his part in this. You can kind of see even just with the show causes and all of that stuff given to Minter for contacting a recruit before the allotted time. That type of thing happens all through college football. And Steve Klingscale, I don't know what he did to impede, but supposedly giving gear to a recruit who eventually became a commit, who eventually transferred away to him at like a camp of some sort. If I have I think that's what happened. I'm not 100 on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. With them getting multiple show causes and all of that, Jim Harbaugh getting a 4-year show cause due to Burgergate and all of that, it's not unsurprising that the NCAA would want a heavy-handed punishment. Now, in this case, why do I have a problem? It's because it's not the NCAA that self-imposed this. This is, if Michigan would have put out a statement of some sort saying, like, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, I'd have a little bit more of an easy time with this. I'm having an issue with Michigan here. I kind of echo what Steve Dace, Michigan podcast, tweeted out earlier today. I've had multiple people reach out to me from in and outside, the building, people who are tertiary to the program, but like kind of a part of the program or have been a part of the program. I've fielded phone calls from multiple people, and they're all upset about the same thing. It's Michigan self-imposing this. Now, if this was a self-imposition that came with, okay, and then the matter is therefore settled, then it would be kind of one thing, and Michigan could go out and say, like, all right, here's why we decided to do this and whatever. But otherwise, what it does is it does make Sharon look like he did something that is guilty of punishment. Now, is the deletion of text messages guilty of punishment? Sure. Okay, that's all I got for you. Sure. But does it make it look like he's got something more that's going on with the Connor Stallions of it all? Yes. And this is going against the Don Canham, the former Michigan athletic director, turning a one-day story into a two-day story. Heck, it's turned into a 2-year story. Michigan could have kind of staved a lot of this off, but they handled things internally so poorly in so many ways. And when you look and see other schools where their NCAA investigations haven't played out in the media the way Michigan's has, Michigan's done nothing to combat it, right? Like, it's playing out in the media, and Michigan's not only done nothing to combat it, it's undermined its own case in a lot of ways. This kind of being one of them, right? And what it reminds me of, so while I was writing, I had The Mandalorian season 3 playing. Spoiler alert, but it's been out for a while. It's not really a spoiler, but there's a part where the main villain, I'm not going to even name it in case you haven't seen it. He says something to one of the other characters and says, like, give me the dark saber and I'll give you a warrior's death. And it's like, well, they're still in the middle of the fight. Like, the fight has not been decided. They're in the middle of the fight, and he's like, basically like, surrender, I'll kill you, but I'll kill you nicely, even though you could still win the fight. That's kind of what Michigan did. It's self-immolated in this moment. Because if I'm Michigan, I'm going more to bat, because you've already seen with Burgergate that the NCAA doesn't necessarily respect your self-imposed penalties, right? Michigan came out and said, we're going to suspend, because everyone thought it was the NCAA was suspending Jim Harbaugh 3 games, and it turned out it was Michigan, and then they still went around and gave him a 4-year show cause for the whole thing, for his pleasure. So if I'm Michigan, unless you have it and like on such good authority to the point where the NCAA is willing to like put out there like, hey, we're going to drop this, then why are you participating in this sham trial, essentially? I just think it's absurd.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, and you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
The New York Islanders win the 2025 NHL Draft Lottery.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders.
What a momentous night Monday was for the New York Islanders. In spite of having just a 3.5% chance of getting the top pick in this year's NHL draft, the Islanders win the draft lottery. And they now own the number 1 pick in this year's draft, scheduled to happen late next month in Los Angeles. This is a game changer, and it has potentially the ability to impact the retool/rebuild of the New York Islanders. The ripple effect of this lottery win is going to be felt for a long time. And I'll start with this. The Islanders are still looking for a general manager. Well, the Islanders' general manager job just got more attractive to anybody. When you know that you have the first overall pick in this year's draft, that when you join this organization, you start out with that pick. That is a bona fide aspect, a bona fide fact that is going to attract potential GMs to this job. It also gives the New York Islanders an opportunity to add a very, very talented player who potentially could play in the NHL this year. And everydayers, we've discussed the fact that the Islanders prospect pool isn't exactly filled with players who are ready to come in and help right now. That the best players in this pool, the Cole Isermans and the Danny Nelsons, those guys are a couple of years away, maybe 3. But, well, now that this season is over, let's say 2 years away. Now, if you have that first overall pick, you have the opportunity to add a player who will be on your NHL roster this year. And that definitely changes the approach that you have. The top 3 players as of right now in the NHL draft, the prospects listed at the top, and we saw them if you watched the draft lottery. You had defenseman Matthew Schaefer. He is considered the top prospect, a potential number 1 defenseman. And, you're talking about a big deal there. You have Michael Misa, a center. And then you have Long Island native James Higgins, also a center. Those are your top 3 picks. If you add a player who can make the roster right away or very soon after, maybe they don't start the season on the Islanders, but maybe they're there by, January, let's say, and I'm just making this up. But what it means is you construct your roster differently. You move out some of the older players maybe a little bit sooner, knowing that you have an elite talent coming in. Now, none of these players are considered, a Sidney Crosby or an Alexander Ovechkin or a Connor McDavid. They're not considered generational talents, but the difference between the number 1 pick and the number 10 pick, which is where the Islanders were originally slated to select, is significant. And if you watch everydayers, if you check out Monday's Locked On NHL, before the draft lottery, I did a segment with JD Young of Locked On Sharks. He knows the draft forwards and backwards, and he gave a brief scouting report on all 3 of these players. And I think, it's a good little introduction to them. But the Islanders in franchise history have only had the first overall pick 4 times. 1972, their first year, first draft, they took Billy Harris. 1973, Dennis Potvin, number 1 overall pick, Hall of Famer. 2000, Rick DiPietro, injuries derailed his career. And then in 2009, so 16 years ago, John Tavares selected first overall by the New York Islanders. And, think about it, in more than 50 years, the Islanders have now only had 4 number 1 overall picks. This would be the 5th. And to say that it will have an impact on this franchise, think about the impact that all of those players had. John Tavares obviously changed the trajectory of the franchise. They didn't surround him maybe with as much talent as they could have. And Tavares was not a generational talent. To me, he's still a very good hockey player, but not an all-time great. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer as of right now. Rick DiPietro gave them great goaltending, but injuries obviously hurt him. Dennis Potvin, one of the all-time greats in the Hall of Fame. The Islanders do not win 4 Stanley Cups without Dennis Potvin. And Billy Harris, for the better part of 9 years, was one of the Islanders' better offensive forwards, and they traded him to get Butch Goring. So all of a sudden, everything is different. And I'm going to say this. Think about where this franchise was 6 weeks ago. Think about where this franchise was 3 weeks ago. The Islanders had just missed the playoffs. They finished the season poorly. Lou Lamoriello was still the general manager. And if that didn't change, we didn't expect much else to change. Now we have a new GM on the way. We have the first overall pick in this year's draft. And all of a sudden, when you start connecting the dots, the Calum Ritchies, the Cole Isermans, whoever the Islanders pick number 1, a new GM who hopefully will make this team younger, faster, and more skilled. All of a sudden, the atmosphere around this franchise changes significantly. And the New York Islanders, who it appeared were facing a potentially really long rebuild or retool, that timeline may just have gotten reduced. Because the New York Islanders are in a position now to add a player who can help right away. And, you get a number 1 defenseman, who can be an Islander for a decade. That's a game changer. You add a guy, if you don't want the defenseman, you add that goal scorer who all of a sudden, and look, I don't expect either of these top forward prospects, these top center prospects, to be guys who are going to score 30 goals their rookie year in the NHL. Okay? That's rare. But if they can give you 15 to 20 in year 1, and in year 2, get you 20 to 25, and then develop into that 30-goal guy, plus maybe even more, you're talking about a change in the outlook of this franchise. And all of a sudden, the Islanders go from just another team stuck in the muddy middle to a team that, at least while they may not be elite yet, and they may not even make the playoffs this coming year, there is hope for the future for this franchise that 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, just did not exist.